I tell you once more, please get out of my way. I don't want you no more.
We're done here, boy.
I know you think you're so fine, but you can't see it. I've been wanting to unwind.
A film about women growing in the cannabis industry? Yeah, and it's really good. Welcome back to Women Leading in Cannabis, where we go deep and get real with the women pioneering and shaping the cannabis industry. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and Pandora. Subscribe to Women Leading in Cannabis. I'm Kyra Reed, and I'm here with Kyra Russo and Chiah-Rodriques. Hello, ladies. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
So excited to have you here. Kyra is the director of the independent film about women in the cannabis industry, Lady-Buds. Lady-Buds tells the story of 6 courageous women, including our other guest, Chiah-Rodriques, who came out of the shadows of the cannabis underground to enter the newly legal market. With deep-pocketed corporations taking over the industry, these trailblazers risk everything to make their American dream come true in the very market they helped create. Please welcome Kyra and Chiah to Women Leading in Cannabis. Ladies, it's taken us a while to get this interview, but I am so happy to have you here. And before I begin, I want to tell my audience, I want to say to my listeners today, ladies, do yourself a favor and take 2 hours to watch this film. Do it undistracted. Do it in a place where you can really sit and absorb the stories of these women, because it is the story of women in cannabis. And these women, whether you are from Massachusetts or Oklahoma or New York, these ladies are the pioneers who made what you are doing now possible. You need to know their story, you need to know their names, and you need to honor their legacy. So I'm so grateful to Kyra for giving us this film and making this possible, because charting the timeline of women in cannabis is really, really important to do. All right, ladies, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming and talking with me. Let's get right into it. Kyra, why did you make this film?
Sure. Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for that amazing introduction. I live in California, and when Prop 64 was on the ballot in 2016, which was going to legalize recreational cannabis in California, I knew we were going to see a huge change, a huge shift in the way people thought about cannabis, in the economy, of course. And in my research, I had noticed there was a lot of women speaking up in the media, entrepreneurs, activists, even cultivators coming out and supporting Prop 64. So I was pleasantly surprised to learn that, there was just so many women in this space, after, I've had a relationship with cannabis for my whole life, but, I've always thought of it as a stoner/bro culture. So I was like, wow, this is a space really filled with a lot of amazing women. So as a filmmaker, I'm interested in finding a good story. And I started to interview women in the space. I went to cannabis farmers markets. I went to women in cannabis networking events like Women Grow. Everybody's origin story in cannabis is super, super interesting. I interviewed over 100 women, and I was looking for a feature film to do. I've been making short films for a long time, and this is my first feature. And it was really important to me to lift up the voices of women in the community, because I had realized, wow, that women are really the backbone of the cannabis industry. They needed to tell their stories. So I just kind of, ran with my curiosity and, chose very diverse voices, which is important to me as an LGBTQ filmmaker, to always, represent lots of diverse voices and have them tell their stories and represent different areas of cannabis, but tying together universal themes to hopefully invite people into this film and relate to the women who are just, in my opinion, superheroes, fighting against these giants, right? Because your show talks about, women entrepreneurs in the space and the business of cannabis and the women that are doing these amazing things. But as we all know, like, the cannabis industry is changing from the small mom and pop operators to these like vertically integrated companies. So I knew this was going to be a historic moment to capture, and I wanted to see it through the lens of the women in the space. And yeah, I want to make movies that I want to watch, and this was something that was super intriguing to me.
So watching this film was, I guess, an emotional roller coaster for me personally. Because it captured for me my own experience. I'm not a grower, I'm not a product maker, but I support women in the industry, and I've been very involved emotionally with a lot of women in this space who are doing what Chia is doing. And I know a lot of the women that were in your film. And it's kind of my experience, and it's the collective experience we've all been having over the last 5 years. On the one hand, it's just this like brutal recall of the last few years of the cannabis industry. I mean, it was so freaking hard, especially for the small farmer and the maker. But there's this kind of light and dark in cannabis, and you captured it so beautifully in the film because you shined a light on one of the reasons why I think we all stay despite the challenges, and that is community. The incredible generosity of the people in this industry, the relationships and the bonds they share, the love of the plant. It's something that just doesn't exist in other industries. So, Chris, when you started this project, did you know what you were getting into? And then what surprised you most about the struggle, and what surprised you most about the community?
Wow. I honestly didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was just really following my intuition, and in a way I felt called to make this film. I was not a member of the cannabis community. I lived in Los Angeles. And again, I was just so intrigued by this new industry coming in and seeing so many women in the space. But I really did identify with the philosophies of the people that have been growing cannabis for decades up in the Emerald Triangle. The philosophies of, the back to the landers and living off the grid and creating a sustainable way of life. And with having these really beautiful communities that support, each other and the areas that they live in. So I was really lucky when I was meeting these amazing women at some of these events I went to, when they said, "Oh, come up to our farm and check it out in the spring and the summer." And for me, that was like, wow, I'd never been to a cannabis garden. I'd never been to a cannabis farm. So it was obviously very, very enticing. So I went. This is a cautious community. This is a community that was always, very much under the radar. To gain the trust of the people in the film took time, took visits, took, conversations, took smoking a lot of weed. So they could really see that I was the real deal. And I was very lucky that, they trusted me. So I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And as a documentarian, what is smart to do is to have a framework around the story you're going to tell. So we thought we would, myself and my producing partner and cinematographer Christian Bruno, decided to frame the film the 1 year leading up to legalization, and then the 1 year following in the lives of these women, to see how they would transition from coming out of the shadows into the regulated market. Everybody had so much optimism at the beginning. Everybody was really excited to live their authentic lives out in the open and try this. And yeah, we didn't know that the story arcs were going to turn so dramatic, but that always makes for a good story. But watching the challenges that everybody faced, was difficult. But I hope I captured it authentically. I think I did. It was very, very honest. The women really opened up to me and trusted me. And I really wanted to create a very intimate portrait so that people could relate. It doesn't even have to be about cannabis. I mean, these women wanted to succeed in business. They wanted to create their own, American dream. And they just happened to have been doing this for years. It was cannabis. And so it was very interesting to have cannabis as the backdrop, because there were so many other layers, right, of what that meant for it to be cannabis, to have been illegal and now legal. So that's maybe a long-winded answer, but I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I kind of went with it. And then the film was door to door done in about 3 years. And then we had the pandemic, which I had to shelve the film for an entire year last year. But I think it's coming out at a good time, because it is good to honor the history and the struggles that the pioneers went through that came before everyone that's succeeding today.
So you said that you hope that you captured it authentically, and I will tell you that there was not one moment that I was watching it that I felt I did not know this story. It was so authentic. It was so true to the experience that not just Karen and Chia and the other ladies had had. I was shaking my head. I was nodding my head. I was going through, hearing Karen talk about her hope for the future. I had those same conversations. And hearing that again and taking myself back to that place of that time and knowing how it's turned out has been, oh God, when I said it was an emotional roller coaster, I wasn't kidding. But it makes me wonder, so we're here today. This film finished 3 years ago. Chia, where are we today?
Well, hi, thanks for having me. Like you said, it's been an emotional roller coaster. It's been a roller coaster for our business, for the whole industry, for everyone involved watching and witnessing what's been going on. Even for the consumers, it's been a roller coaster. We're still in it. It's not over. We're not like smooth sailing yet. It's still a lot of bumps in the road. There's constantly new changes coming at us. A lot of people are reconsidering whether this is for them. I mean, I'm doing that. It's really stressful. And we got into this, for various reasons. You can see the women in the movie, they all came to cannabis for, very different purposes, but I fell into it. I mean, I was basically born into this. For me, it's all I know. And it's really scary to think like, what else can I do? What else should I do with my life? Is this really the stress we want to live? But yet I'm super committed to my community and the people around me and the plant. And so it's a internal battle that we're, still living.
So I have interviewed you a couple of times over the years, and I know your story. And I think Ladybuds and being out front for this film, you've kind of become a spokesperson, if you will, for the region. So I've gotten to know you over the years, but being in your home and seeing your family, seeing True when he was a little guy, it was all so personal. And as Chris said, really intimate. Why did you allow the cameras into your space that way? And what was your motivation for doing so and being part of this film?
Well, I had no idea. I mean, I really thought like Chris was going to interview me. It was going to be one of those things where you sit in front of a bookshelf and you get interviewed for an hour. And it's nothing like that, really. And I didn't know what to expect at all. And neither did my family. I mean, we kind of just flowed with it. And Chris came to our farm and we met her and she just started interviewing each of us individually and then following us around. And it sort of just evolved into that was the story, right? Like at first I kept thinking, well, what is my story going to be like just farming? And it evolved over time. It just sort of happened to land right when we were having a lot of family drama dynamics around the plant. And so the kids were a little resistant, but I think they're really embracing it right now. And I don't want to give anything away about the film so much, but people can watch it, of course, and see what they think. But, having a family living the cannabis lifestyle with children is a challenge. It's always been a challenge. It was a challenge for me growing up, being around the plant and learning how to have an appropriate relationship with the medicine. And so I'm reliving that right now, with my older son. And then now my younger son is coming into being interested in cannabis, and so it's like every kid is different. The family dynamics have changed entirely. And so here we are, full circle again. So it's been an interesting experience, and being so public about it was very nervous for me in the beginning. I wasn't quite sure, like, if I even wanted to go see the movie. I had a lot of reservations in the beginning when we first saw it. Like I said, I never want to watch this again. That was so hard for me. But once I started getting feedback and once I realized my older son was really like learning a lesson from his experience too, I realized like, oh my God, so many people have a similar experience as me. And this is going to be a way to sort of break the stigmas and help people. And so now I'm fully embracing it, and here we go. We're on this ride, and my older son has seen the movie a couple times. He went to the premiere, and he's going to be attending some of the showings that are coming up. So I think he's really like embracing the fact that, it's a plant that we all have to learn how to relate with in our own way, and being cautious about it with teenagers is important.
Mm-hmm. So as a woman grower, and, Chris, if you want to weigh in on this as well from your experience, do you think that you have different challenges being a woman than you would if you were a male farmer? Or is it at this point, it's just cannabis and it doesn't really matter the gender of the person running the farm?
Well, I'm not running the farm. Me and my husband are kind of splitting the workload. We do, each have our strengths and weaknesses, of course, and we complement each other in those ways. And, you have to have a passion for the plant to even be here anyways. And I have a very deep passion for the plant, and I have a really deep connection with the medicine itself and how it's helped me personally. Having that passion is really important because you're going to run into a lot of hurdles. You're going to hit up against a wall. You're going to get negative feedback. You're going to get, all these things that have happened to me over the years working in a very male industry and a male company for a while. Those challenges were really in my face. And, I feel like you kind of have to roll with the punches, in every way with being in the cannabis industry. And so I'm maybe not the most smiley, positive person, but I really, that has sort of helped me actually when challenges come up to really stand up for myself and be direct. And that has really helped me. And this film has helped me in a lot of ways with self-confidence and just feeling like I am in the right place, and I'm doing the things that need to be done to help this plant and this industry propel and the women in it have a voice. And so I really feel proud that I'm able to have this soapbox to get on it and talk about it,
Chris, what is your hope for this film?
The dream is actually happening right now. I'm sitting here talking with you. The film is having a theatrical release this week. It's available on streamers. My hope has always been, as a filmmaker and a storyteller, is to reach people with stories. And, I tend to lean into stories that aren't so mainstream, but hope that the mainstream audience will find it and think differently about, the stories I'm telling. And, this film is not only a film about women in cannabis and legalization in California, it's a film about resilience and reaching for your dreams against all odds. And I hope to inspire women to take up the challenge that could be hard sometimes and go and reach for something that they want to do. So, yeah. And aside from that, the messaging in the film is also to think about supporting local businesses, supporting women-owned businesses, to think about cannabis differently as a wellness product, as medicine, and also, frankly, to think about our larger society. I feel like the film reflects, in many ways, what's going on in this country with, corporate capitalism sort of taking over our democracy. Not to sound too lofty, but like what's happening on the ground in the cannabis industry with big businesses coming in and sort of taking over the mom and pop businesses, or at least making it more difficult for smaller businesses to survive in their regions, is something we need to look at, even on a larger scale with our country. So, I want people to think differently about what the stories I'm telling in the film, and to really support local businesses and understand the history and who laid the groundwork for this industry that we have today.
How did this film change you? How did working on this film change you?
Well, I went through some up and downs just like the women in the film. It was, as an independent filmmaker, to keep going meant being resilient, meant finding the money to continue, meant, doing the jobs I needed to do to help the film continue. So I feel like I've become a better filmmaker. I know the process through and through. I understand the community where, cannabis all started decades ago from Northern California. And I learned the little known history of the queer cannabis activism that came out of the Castro in the 90s. As a queer filmmaker, I felt, wow, why didn't I know this history? It's so important.
Yeah, I'm glad you covered that. I was really happy to see that in the film.
Thank you so much. Yes, so many people I know don't even know about it. And if it weren't for, the queer heroes like Dennis Perone and Scott Imler and Brownie Mary, who were, activists in the 90s in the AIDS crisis and actually laid the groundwork of the industry we have today by passing Prop, 215, which legalized medical marijuana. It really did lay the foundations for this legal industry. So I kind of almost felt like it was my duty to make that history known. Yeah, I mean, this has been a journey for me too. I've grown close to the women in the film. I'm now part of the community, and I just really, I'm very appreciative of the relationships and of, having the privilege to tell these stories. So I feel really lucky that I was able to do this.
There's a real love among the women in the industry, isn't there?
There is, and they look out for each other, especially in the small communities in Northern California. I mean, I do live in Los Angeles, but the film is a California story. But I have seen the communities up north, especially the farmers that live in Mendocino and Humboldt. They look out for each other. So it is. The community, you said it earlier, community really is the heart of this film. And even like including K-Mud, the community radio station, I felt was real anchor to show and to symbolize just how important community is for everybody.
It is, and it's important for the plant. And wherever legalization happens across the country, it's the same thing. It's that there's a sense of community that evolves around the industry. And watching the film, I realized, Humboldt really is kind of the tip of the spear. It's where everything cascades from. And even if we are going to be invaded by corporate raiders, a part of the industry that is in its DNA is this community, this sense of community and looking out for each other. And it's one of the reasons that I know I've stayed. And, I know, Chia, you've led in your attempts to bring people together. You were leading a huge community of growers in Mendocino.
Correct. Yeah. Oh, well, Mendocino Generations is a large group of farmers for our area. We have about 60 farms that are involved in the group. And basically, we're just a big family who support each other at this point because we understand that community over competition. Really, if we're not all here being a part of this, then who is? And we are the foundation. We're family, where our kids go to school together. We participate in the same events around the county, things like that. That is really vital and important to this whole picture, because if that foundation wasn't there, I mean, what do we have? This is all the community has had for so long. Cannabis is a vital and extremely important piece of the puzzle where, our economy relies on it. And our economy here in Mendocino County and the Emerald Triangle particularly has suffered incredibly from the lower prices that we're seeing right now, from the difficulty of becoming legal or deciding to stay on one side or the other of that fence. There's been some division that's happened. And so it's really important to, support the community and help each other.
Whichever. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when the film was shot, the main issue was larger companies coming in. And also very interesting, I did not know about the 5-year guarantee on small farms and how that was tossed aside. That was really incredible to learn. Very painful to hear. To just imagine what the industry here would have been like had that happened, because we would be in our almost last year, I guess, that 5 years. But today the problem is pricing. It's the unlicensed market is taking down the corporations and the small legal farms. So where do we go from here, Chia?
Well, that's a great question. And that's the conversation I'm having with everyone right now. And it's sort of ironic because people who have built this industry don't trust the government in a I mean, that's sort of a theme, right? It's the theme of the community that I live in, specifically where people like my parents moved out of the urban areas to get away from, the man, basically, and to get away from the government and the politics of the time in the late 60s, early 70s, and start new. And so these people are rebels at heart. I think I said that in the movie. It's like you have to be a rebel to be here, to be doing this from the beginning. We have to remember that the people who built this industry have a distaste. They don't have trust for bureaucracy. And so a lot of those folks are still deciding whether they think this is a viable thing to cross that bridge and to come to the other side. And we're still busting those people. We're still raiding their homes. We're still taking their children to CPS. This is PTSD it has a long history. And so when we say like those people on that side of the fence are ruining it for the people on this side of the fence, it's not that. It's very touchy, it's not. And so, I worry for my friends who didn't want to cross that bridge. And here I am on the other side, and I'm worried for myself and the friends who did come over here with me. It's a challenge. It's hard to know if that was the right decision.
What advice would you give quickly to women who are cultivators in new states? What is one piece of advice you would give them to kind of carry forward in their career with?
Well, finding a unique product, a unique company, some way to fit in is really important because, for me, we have a brand and everybody has a brand. It's really hard to stand out. So finding some way to really stand out, in your local marketplace is really important, I think, coming into it because it's so competitive. It's really hard to find shelf space and doing something really unique. People that are doing a lot of these sort of addendums to the branding are really important. These, infused meals, these events, a lot of very creative and unique things going on right now. And I think that people can find a place in that side of the industry. I think they're going to really thrive because people are so hungry for connection, for community, for something different. And I think that women can really bring that. We've seen that in California for sure. It's kind of been like this explosion of creativity in every direction around this plant. So I think women in other states, they really have an opportunity to stand out and do something wild and fun and new.
I love it. Chris, do you have any further updates on the women in your film that you can share with us?
Well, I don't want to give away too much in the film. I will say that the story's not over. The women are still finding their way. They're building their businesses, or they've decided to not. Felicia Carbajal, the Latinx queer activist, she's amazing, and she is working 24/7 to, help repair the harms that the war on drugs had to communities, impacted communities in Los Angeles, and frankly across the country. And she just led a deep dive into the Los Angeles community and helped expunge 60,000 records recently from the city of Los Angeles. And she's a superhero, making lots of change and making a difference. And that was made national news recently. She's the executive director of the Social Impact Center, and they're really focused on helping, the communities that have been impacted by the war on drugs, which is really, really important. There's still a lot of work to do, and as Chia can attest to, it's still a struggle. But everybody's remaining hopeful. I don't want to give too much away, but all the women in the film, I'll just mention, we have Karen Wagner, who's a former restaurateur from New York, turned Humboldt cannabis entrepreneur. We have, as we've heard from Chia, who's up in Mendocino, raising a family on a cannabis farm. We have Sue Taylor, who's a 72-year-old African-American retired Catholic school principal, whose mission for the last several years was to open a dispensary focused on the needs of senior citizens. And she's super, super inspiring. Mentioned Felicia Carbajal, who's an activist from Los Angeles. And then we have the beloved Bud sisters, who represent, the OGs that lived in the Humboldt Hills and cultivated cannabis as medicine. They were medicine makers, and they're older women who've had to decide what to do, faced with the legalities and the costs of starting their own business later in life. So I like to say the film touches on a lot of different areas of cannabis and with diverse voices, and I'd just be very excited for people to see the film and let me know what you think.
What's next for you, Chris? You going to do another film about cannabis?
Everybody's asked me that. I know, and I actually do a lot of work for cannabis companies. I do a lot of video production. I'm looking at bringing some of these stories, developing them into series inspired by Ladybuds. I feel like, again, I really feel very passionate about women in cannabis, and like I said, and everybody's origin stories are so unique and colorful and inspiring. So I do feel that there's a lot of storytelling that still needs to happen. I'm focused on that. And honestly, right now, the film is having a theatrical release. We're opening in theaters across the country this Friday, November 26th. And we're going to be available on demand, video on demand, through your major cable companies and streamers. And yeah, we're continuing an amazing film festival run. And the reviews have been fantastic. So I'm in the thick of promoting the film and getting the film out there so people can have access to it and watch it. It's very exciting, actually.
That's good. That's so great. There are so many. There is no short supply of incredible women in this industry. All the women. I don't even know how you were able to narrow it down. You said you interviewed 100 women because they all have so much to share, so much character and ambition and toughness and strength and wisdom. I'm glad to hear your thinking into the future about how to highlight more of these women's stories. It's so important and so inspiring. Chris and Chia, is there anything else that you want my audience to know before we go?
I'm just really grateful to be a part of this podcast with you and to be given the opportunity to talk about the film. And I really hope that audiences far and wide watch the film. It's it shines the light on women in the industry, but it does cover a lot of universal themes and topics. And I think that anybody, whether they're interested in cannabis or not, will relate to the film through the universal themes it touches and what's happening in this country. Legalization is kind of sweeping the country. So I'm hoping that people watch this film and think about it as a cautionary tale, because the way the legislation is being written state to state is very different. Now is an opportunity, to watch the film and see how, these regulations really impact, the business community, the legacy community. And it's an opportunity to create an industry that's a little bit different, that has an equal playing field and includes everyone at the table. Yeah, I'm just excited for people to watch it. And yeah, thank you for having me on.
Gia, did you want to say anything before we end?
Well, sure. Just wanted to say thank you again for the opportunity. Kyra, you're always so positive and just making a huge impact for the women in the industry. And I super appreciate you. So thanks for having us.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for stopping by and letting me do an interview with you ladies. Chris, I've been waiting to meet you for years. So it's really great to get the introduction. And, we're here to support what you're doing at Women Empowered in Cannabis as well. So thank you so much for what you've done.
And thank you so much. I really, really have enjoyed talking with you, and I'd love to stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Chia and Chris, for your time and for sharing your journey with us today. Ladies, thank you for tuning in. This podcast is brought to you by Women Empowered in Cannabis, a community that provides resources, connections, events, and content in the US, Canada, and around the world where there's an interest in cannabis legalization. We welcome women who are currently working in cannabis or curious about taking a leap into the industry. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in for another conversation with women leading in cannabis.